I figured it was time to bring back the Disney Q&A, and what better time to do it than right after D23. This week's question comes from everybody, pretty much everybody. And you all asked, what did you think about the blank announcement at D23 this year? I'm going to try and keep it short. Before we start, I'm going to be going into this as if you already know most of the news. If you want to get full details on all of the announcements, I highly suggest you check out DSNY Newscast. That channel has covered the news pretty significantly, so you can get all the details there. Let's start off with the Magic Kingdom and the big one at the Magic Kingdom, which is the announcement of a Tron Coaster over in Tomorrowland behind Space Mountain. I'm pretty excited for this, but I'm also kind of on the fence. I love Tron, I love roller coasters, I love the idea of a Tron coaster, the idea that they're bringing it over from Shanghai Disney is pretty sweet. I think it's weird that they're putting it right behind Space Mountain and that they're not replacing the Speedway with it. Now, don't get me wrong, I guess the perk of them not replacing the Speedway is that they can get rid of the Speedway and put something else there, but the idea of putting two roller coasters together seems strange to me. I mean, obviously it's been done at theme parks before, but to do it here in the Magic Kingdom just seems very un-Disney-like of them. On top of that, you have to consider the context of these attractions. Tron is going to be a brand new, exciting, sci-fi, sleek, thrilling coaster, and Space Mountain will be, over 40 years old and not as thrilling and not as new and not as exciting. And for us as Disney fans, I don't think that's going to matter much. Space Mountain's a classic. I don't think it's going to change just because there's a new fancy coaster there. But if you think about the general guest who doesn't care about the history and the legacy of stuff like this, I think it's going to become pretty clear that one of them is a new cool coaster and the other one's kind of old and worth forgetting. And it makes me wonder if Disney's setting themselves up so that, in 10 years from now, they can justify completely changing Space Mountain under this, argument that nobody rides it as much anymore because there's a bigger, better coaster behind it. But we'll see. I'm excited. The other big news that we got out of the Magic Kingdom is that we're getting a theater off of Main Street based on Kansas City's Willis Wood Theater. I think this is pretty cool. If they're going to do like a big Broadway style production similar to the way Disney's California Adventure had Aladdin and now it has Frozen, I'm all for that. I also love the idea that it's not on Main Street, it's just off to the side. When Walt was working on Disneyland when he was still alive, he had multiple plans to branch off of Main Street and do separate areas, and they never happened. So I kind of like that in a weird way. One of those plans kind of came to fruition. I mean, he wasn't planning a theater, but the idea that there's just an offshoot to Main Street now will be pretty sweet. So I'm looking forward to it. Moving on to Epcot. Obviously, the two big elephants here are the replacement of Ellen's Energy Adventure with a Guardians of the Galaxy ride, and then the announcement of a Ratatouille ride over in France. If you want to know my stance on putting IPs in Disney, I made a video that was basically in defense of the idea. So I'm kind of okay with it, and that video will explain in detail as to why, so I'm kind of cool with the news. To me, the more exciting news to come out of all of the Epcot announcements were, one, the Mission Space news. I mean, I knew it was being refurbed. I knew they were putting a new mission into it. I didn't realize that they were doing two new missions, and I like the idea that green is going to be different from orange. That sort of will let them make that mission play up to the ride mechanics, whereas before it was just sort of trying to emulate orange without being as thrilling. But it was well overdue. I mean, it was overdue for a replacement the day it opened. The CG for Mission Space was kind of awful, so I'm really glad that now that they have ILM on their side, that they can put out something good. Even more exciting is this news of a space-themed sit-down restaurant next to Mission Space. The concept art had like all of these window panels that looked out into space, and you had astronauts, and that's all I need. And then lastly, we got some blue sky artist renditions of what they kind of want to make Future World look like. I thought it was interesting. It's blue sky, so I'm not really counting on it to look exactly like that, but I like the idea that they're thinking about changing the way Epcot looks beyond just changing the rides there. They want to transform the aesthetics too, because while it does have this cool 80s feel, if Future World is supposed to be about the future, then we need to drop it and move on to something different, because there is no future where everything looks like Epcot in 1982. On to Hollywood Studios, which I guess for now is still called Hollywood Studios. There was Star Wars Land stuff, and surprisingly, I mean, I wasn't like disappointed with the Star Wars Land news, but it really didn't do anything for me. You know, we got new concept art, we got the new miniature model of the land, and while that stuff's really cool, I feel like I'm always aware of how much that'll change by the time it's actually a physical place, so it doesn't really excite me. We also got a name for the land, which is like Galaxy's Edge. I think that's neat. Honestly, the names don't mean too much to me. I mean, on the news that would have excited me most was way more details on the ride, and to be honest, I don't want to get that news until we're getting closer to the actual area opening. I do like that Rex from Star Tours is going to be coming back in some form. I think he's like a musician, like Sunny Eclipse, so I think that's pretty cool. To me, the big news for Hollywood Studios were all of the details surrounding the Great Movie Ride closing and this new Mickey attraction, which I believe is called the Mickey Mouse Runaway Railway. I like the idea that Mickey's getting a ride. He deserves it. Kind of the whole centerpiece of all of this Disney stuff, and he's never had a ride of his own. I don't miss the Great Movie Ride. I was surprised that they're closing it so soon. And there is going to be a lot of discussion over whether it's even worth going to Hollywood Studios anymore, considering there are only going to be 4 attractions for quite a while. But love that they're basing this attraction on the new Mickey Mouse shorts that have been out on the Disney Channel and that you can get on iTunes and that they play on the resort televisions over in Disney World and Disneyland. Like, they're gorgeous. The art is amazing. The storytelling's funny. And I love that, in a weird way, that series itself is getting a ride. So I'm really excited for it, and I hope they are pretty speedy with putting it together. I can't imagine it's going to be a super high-tech ride, or a thrill ride, I should say, that requires like a long time to build it up, but what do I know? I'm not a construction worker. For me, the biggest news came out of like the miscellaneous department. So we've got all the transportation news. Minivans, I think, is a cool concept. I think their pricing is really weird. $20 a ride is ridiculous. If the idea is to compete with Uber and Lyft, you're not going to do it at a $20 price point. Let me tell you that. You're going to do it with like a $5 to $8 price point. I understand their thinking is probably, you know, for individuals, they want to get you on a bus. This is for maybe families that need to lug a whole bunch of like baby stuff and carriages, or big groups that don't want to, you know, get in line to go on the bus together. So, you know, it is what it is. The gondolas seem pretty cool. I like that it's called the Disney Skyline. It's kind of got a cool like retro Art Deco name. Like, it sounds like something you'd call like a Disney Zeppelin that takes you to Disney World. And they look neat, and they'll probably be useful if you're staying at that resort or going from park to park. But they're not like game changing. And last, but certainly not least, because to me, this was the highlight of D23, is the announcement of the Star Wars Hotel. Now, we didn't get a date, we didn't get many details, but they confirmed that it's happening, and that really caught me off guard, right? Because when we first heard about it, it was through a like guest experience survey. So to me, hearing that news told me, okay, this is something we might hear about in like 5 years or so, once Star Wars Land is open and they're looking for the next steps. So to get an announcement this year kind of really blew me away. And it especially blew me away because I think this is a big deal. Like, I think even Disney is playing it down more than they should. If this is what they promise it will be, this is going to be a real game changer for the theme park industry. Much in the same way Disneyland was in 1955, I think this can be the next evolutionary step in vacationing and theme parks and that sort of immersive experience. You know, you're talking about an experience where you're thrown into a story. It's interactive. It's not just a video game. It's not just getting on a ride. You're placed into a story and you're living it from the moment you start to the moment you leave. And that immersive element is thrown into every aspect of what you do, from where you're sleeping to where you're eating to what you're doing during the day. That's incredible. I hope it opens sometime soon after Star Wars Land opens. I am already trying to figure out how much kidneys go for on the black market, because I am willing to sell one to be part of this first wave. Because again, like I said, I think this is a big deal. I'm looking forward to so many more details about that whole hotel, and I'll probably do a video all about the idea and what could come of it and what potential it has sometime in the future. So there you have it, a real quick rundown of the major park announcements at D23 and what I thought about them. Again, if you want to get more details about some of these announcements, head on over to DSNY Newscast, where all of that's been covered in great detail and you can learn more. If you have a question for me for future Q&A videos, I don't know how often I'm going to do these, every week, every other week, we'll see. I'm going to try and bring it back gradually. You can leave them in the comments below and I'll pick the most interesting ones and try and answer them. Thank you all for watching, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.